$200,000 a year in passive cash flow, right? And then somebody else is like, I don't even need all that money. I just want my time freedom. I just need this much money to
Mhm.
live off of and I'm happy, right? So
Right.
everybody's definition of wealth is so different.
Franchise is not much different. Like if you want more hands off, it's going to require more capital typically.
The
Mhm.
first year on year cash return is like, it's amazing. So if you're like, hey, I'm an inventor, I want to do it my way kind of person, franchising is probably not for you.
Chris Miles was able to retire twice by the time he was 39 years old. But he's not content to just enjoy his own financial freedom and peace of mind. Chris wants you to have your own ripple effect so you can live free today. He's not the financial advisor you expected. He's the anti-financial advisor you deserve. He's jumping behind the mic right now, ready to make waves. Here's Chris Miles.
Hello, my fellow Ripplers. This is Chris Miles, your cash flow expert and anti-financial advisor. Well, I'm going to show that's for you, those that work so hard for your money, and you're now ready for your money to start working harder for you today. You want that freedom. You want that cash flow right now. You don't want to have to wait 30 or 40 or 50 years from now, if you're lucky. You want that lifestyle today so you can live that life that you love with those that you love. But it's not just about getting rich, because as you grow financially, as you become more wealthy, more free, you have a greater capacity to bless the lives of those around you. That is the ripple effect I'm here to create today. Thank you for tuning in, guys. Appreciate you binging, sharing these episodes, and you know what? And just being awesome guests, because yes, you've pushed us in the top 0.5% of podcasts nationwide or worldwide, even for that matter. So put that in perspective, guys. I think there's some roughly like 3 point some odd million shows. That puts us in like the top 30,000 of shows. So thank you so much for being a part of this today. As a reminder, if you have not done so already, go check out our website, moneyripples.com. Many of you have questions, whether it's about infinite banking, passive income, all of it can be found there. Go ahead and go down that rabbit hole and check that out now. Hey guys, so I'm bringing back a guest who I think might be our third time having her on. This might be the third time's a charm for Kim Daly here. If you haven't been listening to this show or watching this show for the last year, probably, we actually have had Kim on recently before, but she's really like I would call her like the franchise matchmaker, right? She is the person that's, if you're looking for a franchise, like if you could have a business, by the way, a business you can even use an IRA to invest from, which you cannot do normally when you start a business. But if you're looking to actually have a system that's already in place, like kind of a plug and play type of situation here, an actual real business that can pay you great income, that is exactly what Kim matches you up with, right? She's been doing this for over 20 years, been helping people do this for a long, long time. One of the top consultants in America, really helping people do that. So excited to have her here. And as we were talking about on the air, she's a huge gym rat, or enthusiast. Maybe gym rat's kind of, has a negative connotation, but either way, it's so good to, yeah, a little rat. So it's so good to have you here today, Kim.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. You know what? I love how you said like binging on your content. I remember the first time I was going to be your guest and I was cleaning my
Mhm.
pool and I was outside and I listened to one episode and I started binging them all. I can say that I have been a money player binging content for a while.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, I appreciate you being here. Well, give us a little bit of background for those that are new. Tell us a little bit, just to fill in the gaps. Tell us a little bit more about you, Kim.
I love it. And I'll start out by saying I'm an alternative investor. I use infinite banking to fund this business when I need it and other passive investments that I have. So I can speak to anybody out there that's, trying to build these diversified portfolios. Like, how does a business fit into that? But as
Mhm.
Chris mentioned, for the last 22 years, I have been a franchisee of a company called FranChoice. My franchise is to help you find the perfect franchise that will help you reach your personal, professional, and financial goals. So I've been so blessed by this industry. It's like I do charity work in a way because I just love to give back. The franchise industry has completely changed my life. I was an entrepreneur before that. And I was successful, but not nearly as successful as what I've achieved over the last 22 years. And that's really what I love to talk about and share with people.
Well, let me ask you a question here. Why should people tune in and listen to the rest of this episode? What is it that you're going to give that's so important?
Well, so When you think about building a business, right? Most people
Mhm.
understand that 90% of millionaires own their own business. But starting a business from scratch is a very arduous task, right? In fact,
Yeah.
the easiest people to convince, Chris, of a franchise, the value of a franchise are former entrepreneurs,
Mhm.
including Kim Daly. So if you is scratch before you're like, once in a lifetime is probably enough, even if it was successful, right? It's just hard. And a lot of times, where we are in our life, we just don't want all 3 to 5 years, if that's what it takes to kind of toil and, struggle and try to figure out the model when you can just pay somebody a franchise fee and get instant access to ready-made tools. So the answer to your question is you have to have the burning desire to want to be a business owner in your local community. That doesn't mean you have to be an active full-time owner or an active full-time owner forever, but the passion to build a business, create jobs, create tax advantage, create another cash flowing asset, but an asset that you fully own and control. And then you add in the franchise on top of that, we're buying down that learning curve, we're partnering ourselves with people, and that statistically buys up the success rate. And then we're connected to this network of franchisees and like-minded people who can be our accountability partners and our coaches, because as it does get hard, you find yourself feeling like, did I make the right decision? How do I get myself out of this, rabbit hole? But now in a franchise, there's this whole network of other people that you can reach out to either hold you accountable or to be like, hey, you're doing better than me. Like, what am I doing wrong? You're not just out there fumbling around in the dark trying to figure it all out on your own.
So true. And this is not like just getting another McDonald's or another crumble cookie type of a situation, right? This is something that's actually really surprising. It's like sometimes it could be brick and mortar, it could be service-based businesses, but these are the kind of businesses you may never have heard of, correct?
Correct, Chris. I am the queen of the business that people are like, it's a franchise. So, like, as one of America's top franchise consultants, I love to tell people shockingly, you will have to beg me to show you food. It's not that I don't have it in my inventory. Trust me. That's what everybody thinks franchising is. There are just
Mhm.
faster, easier, better ways to make money where you get a better quality of life. Nothing about a food based business speaks quality of life, right? It speaks lots of time, lots of employees, minimum margins. Like, again, they're just faster, easier, better ways. In a lot of the things that I love to focus on are in services. Some of them, like you said, have a brick and mortar location. So for example, like in the holistic health space, you could do anti-aging, you could do holistic health, like infrared light or IV drip bars, or even a gym, fitness, wellness centers like med spas, to non-brick and mortar things. And there's, I mean, a wide array of stuff there, from home services to business services. So depending on the person I'm working with and what environment you feel is inspiring. Some people are inspired by having a location that they drive by and go, that's my business, right? And then others are like, I like being kind of the millionaire next door where nobody really knows what I do, right? And I don't
Mhm.
care if it's garbage, picking up garbage, so the range of options that we have to play with are so vast. Finding the right business is not, like, for you, it may seem daunting. For me, that's what I've spent the last 22 years doing. So I just need the person whose heart is open and ready to say, I don't know if I want to own a business, but it's like an itch I got to scratch. I don't
Mhm.
know if I have what it takes, but I want to learn. I don't know if I can afford it, but I'm willing to go down the path. What kind of money can I make? And that's really what I want, Chris, is just an open mind that says, teach me, and I'll just
Yeah.
guide you down the path. And whether it's yes or it's no, that's less relevant. It's just more about teaching you so you can get educated. And hopefully, if it works out, like, saying yes to a franchise is the natural thing to do when you've asked enough questions and you're satisfied with enough of the answers.
Yeah, I remember in 2020, you and I were working together on some stuff where, you were saying, "Well, what are your passions? What are some things you like or love?" And so I remember like one of them was a specific type of running club, right? Where it had like this special high tech type of treadmills and stuff. I was like, "Ooh, that could be cool, even just for me," right? And I remember we were looking at. You remember you asked me the ego question, like, "Do you care how you make money?" I said, "No, I don't." She's like, "All right, well, here's a junk caller. It's like the competitor to 1-800 Got Junk. Here's a
Careful
junk
what you
caller." You're like, this one's really profitable. And then there's this one over here that's, like if you want to rent space to like hairstylists and people like that, and so there's all these like different options, kind of like a real estate, quasi real estate type of thing, right? And
Right.
and I ended up, of course, just end up doubling down on money ripples. It kind of got me clarity there. It's like, I'm going to go this direction instead. But I mean, it was fascinating just to see just how many different options there really are.
Well, what you just said is the best part. It helped you get more clarity that where you were was exactly where you wanted to be. And that's amazing.
Yeah.
Like the fact that my process helped you. What will sometimes happen is people will come and they're in like a state of career transition or just like what's next? And the process, because I begin with the end in mind and we spend so much time focused on what are you trying to create? I'm sure you do this because how do you build a financial plan unless you know where you want to end up, right? Because
That's
wealth
right.
is so different for everybody, right? Like some people want to be multimillionaires, right? And they want it on paper. They want the net worth. And then other people are like, I don't care about the net worth. I want, $200,000 a year in passive cash flow, right? And then somebody else is like, I don't even need all that money. I just want my time freedom. I just need this much money to
Hmm.
live off of and I'm happy, right? So
Right.
everybody's definition of wealth is so different. And that's what makes what I do so fun is just like hearing all the stories and then back ending that into my knowledge and 22 years of relationships with franchisors. Right before we were recording, I was actually on a training call with an oldie but a goodie. Like this franchise has been around for a really long time. I 100% know about it, but we've
Mhm.
never been partnered with them. And so we just had a training call today to add them into our inventory. So that's kind of fun.
And I think a lot of people on this show, I think they really do kind of relate to it. Could be like they're in transition, but sometimes they just want that time freedom, right? And I know one thing we don't often talk about, well, that we do often talk about on this show is that we talk about being work optional because retirement for a lot of people, even for me, even when I think about just retiring to do nothing, sounds miserable. And I know that from personal experience because I've done it. I've been that place before, right? Where it's just
Yeah. Haven't you
miserable.
retired like 4 or 5 times, Chris? Before you were
Only
like
twice.
35.
And then consider it a few times. But yeah, once I did it, after the second time, I realized I got to do something that I can be passionate about. And it was funny, like I was coming from the airport or going to the airport from California to fly back to Salt Lake. And the Uber driver, I talked to him. He says, a lot of people wouldn't know this by looking at me, but he's like, actually, I don't even need this work. He's like, I just do it because I get to meet really interesting people. I can talk and maybe even help somebody out along the way. He's like, honestly, I make all my money from merchant account services. He's like, I have a lot of clientele I manage and help with. It's all pretty much residual income. I'm just getting paid and I'm just doing this to fill my time. And so that's his own little private business, right? He's an independent contractor within Uber and Lyft, right? But that's the kind of same thing we're talking about here, isn't it? And to some level or degree.
Totally. You do not have to buy yourself a job. There are definitely those franchises, like the one we just got trained on is more for a person that wants to be in on the ground floor, sleeves rolled up, interacting with customers, like not even really building a large team, actually. That's one of that business is going to appeal to people that want to be in business without a team of people. But then you have other businesses where the owner comes in as the executive who hires a general manager from day one and is leading his team leveraged through systems and maybe even a big brand and a location. And then other people that I've worked with through you, Chris, have invested in laundromats, right?
Mhm.
Which is almost totally passive once it's up and operating. I don't want to use the word
Right.
passive, but I don't think a business is ever like totally hands off. Like I own land,
Mhm.
that's passive. I like it's
Right.
building equity for me. I'm not doing anything with it, right? But like a business, even a laundromat, while you don't have to be there every single day, I think you do have to check in. You have to make sure that you're collecting all your coins, right? You
Yeah.
might have one or two part-time attendants who are maybe running a, drop off, cleaning, where they fold the clothes and launder them and fold them and then, that kind of a thing. But
Yeah.
it's not like you're busy all the time. And the salon suite, model that you mentioned, I'm the queen of the salon suites. And I love that model because it looks and feels like a real estate investment, but it has business cash flowing returns and it's like long-term sustainable. And eventually I could own the building on top of the business. Like it has so many characteristics for real estate investors that it checks so many boxes. The
Mhm.
first year on year cash return is like, it's amazing. So,
Mhm.
there's something out there for everybody. And again, if you're out there on your own, the reason that franchisors pay me, this is a free service. I'm paid by franchisors and they love me to do what I do because I'm going to get you qualified. I'm going to get you all like your expectations in line and
Mhm.
match you with the right option. Like franchisors will say to me, "Oh, Kim, you always find the best people for us," or your people are the most prepared of any candidates we get, and I love that. I take pride in my work. And
Yeah,
don't you want to be that person? Like, you don't want to be fumbling around when, a franchise is ultimately, Chris, they're awarded. They're not sold. Like good franchisors, they're not just selling a franchise to anybody who will fog up a mirror, right? Because
that's
that's
right.
a nightmare potentially, right? Like it's a mutual evaluation. They're
They're
looking for
testing you
brand
too.
ambassadors, right?
Yeah,
Yeah. They're looking for people that are going to, wear the shirt and carry the flag to whatever extent that company needs that. Again, some full-time, some semi-absent, some more toward the absent, but finding that option on your own, when there's so many options, I don't know how anybody does that with any real confidence, but when you come to me, that's what I do. And in 1 to 2 months, like, we're done. You're signing if this is for you, you are onto your business within 4 to 8 weeks, and if it's not for you, we're all gonna figure that out very quickly. It takes me about
hmm
1 to 2 weeks to help you figure out it's a no, and about 1 to 2 months to help you get to the yes.
yeah, I love that. One thing that I know was kind of a surprise to me, right? Or maybe clarifying for me to understand is that, like you mentioned, there's varying degrees of, I don't know if you want to call it passivity, right? Passiveness. There's varying degrees of that, which I mean, it's never really fully passive, so to speak. Even if it's more active up front with a little bit of extra labor, like you said, hire a general manager. But one thing you taught me that stuck was that the more passive you want it, the more money you got to put down. Which is, I just did an episode on, usually, some people, they say, well, how can I make money with no money? Well, you're going to put time and energy into it. Where it
Exactly.
seems like with franchises, not much different. Like if you want more hands off, it's going to require more capital typically.
You got it. Money and time are inversely related. So when you hear home base, this is the thing I always say about my lovely network marketing friends. I love people who come from network marketing because they have
Mhm.
so much grit, right? And they have so much courage. They're like, they'll talk to anybody. That's how they built their network marketing business. Those businesses really aren't designed to be part-time, which is why so many people get in because it's a really low investment that lowers
Mhm.
the barrier of entry. But the people who are successful are the people who put the most amount of time into it. Now, we
Mhm.
flip that again to our conversation about a laundromat. This could be $1 million build out potentially, right? But maybe you're walking into, I mean, I don't want to make any claim about it, but 5, maybe 10 hours a week, maybe, right?
Yeah.
At the most. Right? Because what are you doing in there? You're not washing people's clothes, right? You're just making sure it's operational. And you may even with scale, with franchising, Chris, we see that wealth is created through scale, like in anything else, right? So if you become a house flipper, it's not about one, it's how do you multiply that or, own real estate properties and rent them Airbnbs. It's about leverage. Same thing in a franchise. And the greater scale you build, the more leverage you have. So I might
Mhm.
take an owner who, let's say, leaves a big job at JP Morgan and steps into his business as a retired W-2 refugee, right? But he didn't come
Mhm.
here to buy a job. He came to be the CEO, leading people, maybe taking skills he took from his big W-2 job. So he built out a location, and then maybe in the beginning, he's got this big learning curve to small business and hiring the right people for the particular business. So maybe he's dabbling 20 hours a week. But when he goes to unit number 2, he's got it figured out, right? So
Mhm.
he may hire a general manager from day one. He might have played that role in the beginning until he got it, under control. But now when you go to build 2 and 3, you're hiring the people right from the beginning. And there's a story like this on my podcast where the guy says by the third store, he was there for the grand opening. Then he took a 2-week vacation. He's like, my team had it. And he validated to me. He's like, when I said yes to this business in 2018, and this was recorded last year in 2022, he said, I just hoped to create enough revenue from the business to pay my utility bills, like all the little, I have enough money to
Mhm.
live off of. I just wanted some cash flow money, right?
Yeah.
And he said, this business today has exceeded his expectation in every single way. That's why he keeps building more of them. He's like, I'm just having fun. It's not taking me more time. I'm making way more money than I ever needed to. I'm building this amazing asset that's going to have tremendous brand equity that will be
Mhm.
value when I go to sell it because he invested at the younger side of a brand. And I always say that the best time to get in is before it's known as Chick-fil-A, before it's just a chicken place, right? But you look at the
Mhm.
leadership and you're like, oh, they have a vision. They're onto something. And you help to awaken that brand. Well, then you own the best, most established locations in your market. So when the whole world wakes up and everybody's like, how did you get this? You're like, there's no more locations, but you could buy mine, pay me 6 times what I built, and I'll happily go away. And
Mhm.
people get it. Private equity comes in and buys Planet Fitness locations and Massage Envy locations and Orange Theory locations. We've seen
Mhm.
senior care businesses. We've seen it happen over and over in almost every industry, even automotive. So you have to think bigger than just a mom and pop business. There's a lot
Yeah.
more going on when you get involved in a franchise that can mean even more money in shorter amounts of time, depending on the brand, doing different things think there's more leverage there, right? Versus just building a mom and pop business with one location and trying to multiply that. But you're missing out on the whole brand recognition piece, which is, again, what creates even more value on top of the value you've created with your locations. It's all
There's
like exponential,
that
if you
brand
will.
value, it creates exponential results, and it's kinda like
Exactly.
multifamily real estate where it's not based on the value of the property per se, but it's based on the profitability. The more profitable it is, the more it grows, and there's not too many things you can invest in where you invest in it, you get more profits, more cash flow, but with more cash flow also comes a higher selling point too. So
There you
the equity
go.
grows while you make more cash flow. That's a very rare combination to find.
That's really where franchising wins. The scale
Mhm.
piece is what really sets it apart. And that doesn't mean that people don't enter in with a single unit. Everybody starts where they feel comfortable. No judgment over here. You can't get to two or
Mhm.
three if you can't get to number one, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's a financial constraint. I always tell people if putting down extra money for number two and number three up front makes you feel cash poor for number one, don't do it, right?
Yeah.
Any scarcity in your mind is going to limit you. So I want you to feel abundant in always in time and money and energy and in everything. And once you get number one, if the territories around you have sold, you're going to have more courage. You're going to have more confidence. You come back to me, we find you another brand, and now you may enter with multiple units. So like there's so many different ways to build and scale wealth within franchising. It can be single unit of multiple brands, but you have a greater economy of scale if you take one brand and the learning curve, right? And then if you
Yeah.
own an entire market, and then even the economy of scale of having like one general manager that you raise up to be the manager of all three stores, right?
Mm.
Saving
Right.
on the managerial salary that it's going to be cheaper to pay him or her a little bit more than to pay three separate general managers and three separate
So true.
businesses, right? So all of
Mhm.
these things are things that I teach. We massage the conversation. I say I do not talk you into anything. I talk you through it. You and your spouse or your partner or whatever, you guys make the decision about what's best for you.
So who would this not be for? Who's not maybe not a good candidate when you're meeting with somebody, say, "You know what? This is probably not for you."
That's a great question. So, few things. One of the most important things to success in a franchise is one's ability to follow the process. So if you're like, hey, I'm an inventor, I want to do it my way kind of person, franchising is probably not for you. I
Mhm.
think minimally financially, I would want you to have about 100,000 liquid plus or minus. It could be 80, 120. I think that's where we can start to create options. Obviously, the more money you have, the more options you have, like buying a car, like anything, right?
Mhm.
But I'd say 100,000 liquid or access to through HELOC or I love how you went right for that. Rob's program. That was great. You're rolling over your 401k. What else? So your personality and not being coachable or open, not having enough money. Um, if you don't have any time, like if you're super busy and you're just like, I don't have any bandwidth, or do you have a spouse? Do you have a teenage or
Mhm.
a grown child? Like it's in your heart, but can you put it in somebody else's? So Chris and I Chris sent me a referral, two very busy W-2 professionals over here on the East Coast. And one's a doctor, one works in IT. But you know what? They made the time. I was worried for him in the beginning. I was like, are you guys sure? You with kids, you can add something else to this mix. But they were so sure and passionate that owning a business is what they really want for their future, that
Mm.
they just had the conviction that we know it's going to be a little bit nutty in the beginning, but we're willing to compromise to create the outcome we want in 3 to 5 years, and maybe even being able to ditch one of these jobs or both of the jobs should everything go well and the scale in that franchise come. So if people want it bad enough, they'll make the time. But I think that's
Mhm.
also, it's money, it's time or timing, and then coachability, being open. I think if you have those 3 things, probably worth at least exploring. And if you don't, there are other things you can do to invest your money.
And I know, like you mentioned, like we have somebody, clients like IT or the health professionals. We've had network marketers. You mentioned that earlier. We have network marketers say, "Hey, we want to make sure we protect our income, or even just get additional streams of income. Let's build something like a spa, like a health spa, or something like that." We've got people, like you said, do laundromats. We've even got professional hockey players looking at options right now. What they can do when they're going the off season. I mean, that's just so cool. Why do you think now is such a good time to do franchising?
Well, let's read the thing that's right behind you. Live your life now, not tomorrow, Chris. There's never going to be a perfect time, right? So it's like, oh, I didn't know franchising was an option. I just met a person who might be able to help me. I might as well explore it now, right?
Mhm.
Or, hey, I'm worried about losing my job. I better start exploring now because if I do lose my job, it's going to be that much harder for me emotionally and financially to take the leap, right? So, like I always say, it's harder to come from a place of scarcity or a lack, right? When you lose the job and you're bleeding financially, living off of your severance, which everybody wants to use to invest in the franchise, it's like better to be in the position where you already own the business and then the layoff comes, right? Because you're like, I don't need that
Right.
job anyway. I already got a business, right? So it's like having the future vision of this is what I want, and now is the time. It's as good as any. It's just like when we decided, is now the right time to get married? Is now the right time to have a child or another child? You just got to do it if that's what you want in your life. You just got to make it the right time right now.
And it's a good point you bring about with unemployment, right? I mean, that's true. We haven't had high unemployment for a long time. So there's always ebb and flow, right? There's times of, low unemployment, there's times of high unemployment. We haven't really been in that place yet where we've had like a really big recession for quite a long time. Now going on over 15 years. That's it kind of makes you wonder, like, would now be a better time to start today versus starting out in, like you said, out of necessity, where now you're mentally scrambling, you're emotionally scrambling, and you're financially strapped. That would be the worst time to start a business, in my opinion.
It's so hard. Yeah. And you know what the best thing is about franchising, Chris? When
Hmm.
in one of my very first jobs in the franchise industry, right out of college, my first mentor taught me in good times and bad, franchising wins. So in good
Mhm.
times, people want more of the American dream. They're putting money in, they're wealth creators. In bad times where there's scarcity, people want control. So when people
Mm.
fear they're going to lose a job or there's instability or high interest rates or whatever this thing is we're in now, a recession, not a recession,
Mhm.
everybody has their own definition. I hear it every day. I want recession resistant. I'm like, great. There are franchises like I just made a little video about this the other day. I said, here are 3 simple franchises that are recession resistant: pet
Mhm.
services, elderly care, and beauty brands. Beauty brands? Yes, because women never stop. Like it would have to be a really, really bad day in Kim's life for me to stop coloring my hair, right? Like I'm gonna
Mm.
color my hair before I go gray, right? My manicure, my skincare, right? Like all the things that I do, I go to the gym to look good and feel good. It's part of how I define myself. It's important for my business and my profession. I'm not going to stop doing it. And I'm not the only woman, right? If you have a
Mhm.
girlfriend or a wife or a daughter in your life, you see the credit card bills, right? There are certain industries that, regardless of what's happening in the world, people are spending money. And there's a lot of industries that on the outside, people would say, wait, in a recession, that must really get hit hard. Where I could be like, I don't know, go look at their data. Massage Envy is the perfect example. I don't know if you know this, but Massage Envy, their first surge was in the recession of 2008.
Mm.
So they created a market for a way for people to relax in a stressful time. So to the outsider, you think, oh, wait, that's like a luxury. I don't have to do that. But they've
Mhm.
defined a customer avatar that, like, I need to go to the gym. Their average customer needs that regular monthly massage. Cool. But
Yeah.
like if you're out there on your own, we're limited by our own assumptions and beliefs. And so this is why I say, come to me. I'm not going to make you right or wrong. I'm just going to challenge you to be like, wait a minute, before you believe that and you eliminate a perfectly great option, go talk to the franchisor. Because again, they don't want to talk you into anything. They don't want
Mhm.
you to fail. They don't want you to sue. They just want to talk you through it. And they have factual data. If you looked at the factual data of Massage Envy, it would blow your mind because it's
Mm.
so it contradicts what your like thinking brain would actually believe.
And that's the thing. Franchisers, they don't want to bring you on if they don't think you're going to be successful. Like it's their brand is online. It's like me. Like we don't bring clients on unless we know they'll be successful in our program because we want to keep that perfect success rate, you know? And I think that's the same thing with franchisers, right? They want the same thing too.
You better believe it. I mean, nobody wants you to lose money. Nobody
Mhm.
wants to hurt anybody. People in franchising. Now, I don't speak for everybody out there in the whole big bad world of franchising. I have what I
Right.
call my little Boca Raton, like perfect paradise in franchising. And that's why I do what I do inside a franchise, because I have a team of people that goes out and finds the right franchisors, the ones that have integrity and have good solid numbers and have history and
Mhm.
track record to back that up and leadership to help support you and take the company forward. So we've sort of sifted and sorted. And even with all of that, Kim Daly has sifted and sorted because I've been doing this for 22 years. So I just sort of apply like, do I like them? How do I feel about it? And that's always served me really, really well, Chris. So, but I always tell people you're not limited by my relationships, because if there's a business that you love that I don't know anything about, bring it on. I'd love to learn about it. May the best franchise win, because what I'll do is I'll teach you what the gold standard looks like. With my
Mhm.
I know this franchisor is a gold standard in their industry. So bring your model and put those franchisors up against these and say, do they match? And if that business ends up being the match for you, I'll work for the referral from you all day long. Me making money every time. That's not the way you do anything with integrity. It's about me helping you. And then the more you give, Chris, the more you receive. In the end, it all comes back. So again, it's more about having an open mind to get educated to see what are the possibilities. Could this be a good investment for me? Would I be, successful at it? And on that note, I do want to say this. If franchising is so good, people will be like, well, then why do people fail? And they'll ask me like, could I be a failure? And I'm like, I don't, or am I the one to be successful? I'm like, I don't know. Are you? Like, you're the only one that's going to show up for your dreams. So when people ask me like, what are your success rates? Well, I don't own the success rate. Like, I lead the horse to water, the cow to water, whatever, but I don't know what you do after you show up, how you show up for your business personally, professionally, and financially, and with consistency. That's between you and your franchisor. So I don't expect you to go on and fail, but certainly some people that I've placed over the years have not done well. And do I take it personally? I mean, I wish they came back to me for a little bit of coaching because I would help their mindset a little bit. But if they don't, I can't help them, and neither can a franchisor. And it's not reality that every single person's going to make the most of their moment, but the vast majority of people who are saying yes are living their lives. And if they're not, the ones who are not successful, they'll own it. Most of the time, you find
Mhm.
people are pretty big. Like they'll be like, yeah, you know what? I could be, and you know what's even better? People will be like, I wasn't successful. And then I stopped doing it my way and I started doing what the franchisor told me to do. And then I became really successful. I love that kind of validation, right? Where it's like, oh, just do what they say to do. Why is it so hard? Sometimes it's just hard. It's hard for us to like let go of control and like be willing to follow somebody else's lead.
It's like a meme I have. It says, if at first you don't succeed, do what your coach told you to do in the first place. Right.
Exactly. Franchise, that would be perfect in franchising. If at first you don't succeed, do what the franchisor told you to do in the first place. So, that's my story. Like, I mean, I'm a history maker in my industry. I still do exactly what I was trained to do
Mhm.
February 14th of 2002 when I went to training to become a consultant. Now, I've made parts of the business systems my own, but I don't skip any part of what I was taught to do 22 years ago because the system works. Why
Yeah.
am I going to change it?
Kim, if people want to get a hold of you, how do they do it?
Oh, the best place is I'm launching a new lead magnet pretty soon. That's going to be so great. It's a little quiz for all of you, but it's not ready today. But go to my website because maybe by the time you're listening to this, it's up there. It's going to be a quiz called How to Pick a winning franchise. But go to my website at the Daily Coach, DALY.com. Now, I also want to say that I am a content educator. So I am all over the place. If you go to YouTube and look up the Daily Coach, I have over 800 videos. I have a podcast of my own on Spotify and Apple called Create Wealth Through Franchising, Rising to the Top. Not in the top of 1% yet, Chris, but I'm getting there. I think I soon will be the number one ranked podcast in the franchise space. So I'm on LinkedIn, Instagram, you name it. If you Google me, you can find me. And if I can help you, absolutely feel free to reach out because I'd love to meet you.
Wonderful. Yeah, we'll be sure to put that in the show notes as well, just so people can get that. In case they're driving, we don't want them to crash, trying to
Yes.
type in, the Daily Coach with the DALY, right? Dailycoach.com. So yeah, we'll be sure to put that in the show notes for everybody there.
That's great, Chris. Thank you so much.
You bet. And everybody, there it is. Like, your success does depend upon you. And as she said, there's no perfect time, right? Like there's really the perfect time is now, right? What is it right now that you can do to start changing your life today so that you have a better tomorrow as well? Guys, that choice is up to you. Make it a wonderful and prosperous week. We'll see you later. Franchise is not much different. Like if you want more hands off, it's going to require more capital typically.
You got it. Money and time are inversely related. So those businesses really aren't designed to be part-time, which is why so many people get in because it's a really low investment that lowers the barrier of entry. But the people who are successful are the people who put the most amount of time into it. And the greater scale you build, the more leverage you have.